Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the August 12th meeting of the Cobb County Board of Zoning Appeals. If we follow our custom at this time, I would like to introduce Officer Mallory. Officer Mallory's with the Cobb County Police Department. He is here representing all our public servants today. If we all please rise, Officer Mallory would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we do get started, I need to reconvene this board quickly as the Cobb County Planning Commission for the purpose of adoption of minutes. Ms. Williams, will you take that over, please?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the hearing of August 4th.
All right. Okay, we recognize that as a three vote, and that's the adoption of the minutes for the Cobb County Planning and Zoning. Okay, back to what's at hand. This is the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. For those of you that are here for the first time, let me give you a little insight on how we're going to conduct the meeting today. The first thing that we're going to concern ourselves with is the consent agenda. This application has been brought to us. Not only this board has reviewed it, but our professional and our engineering staff has reviewed it. There's no known opposition to this particular case, so we'll go forward with Mr. John Peterson, our head zoning administrator. We'll read this case into the record. The applicant, he or she, will identify themselves by raising their hand. And likewise, if there is anybody here in opposition, if they would identify themselves, and if there is any opposition, we will pull that particular case and hear it in its regular numeric order. Then our next procedure will be our continued cases. These are cases that have been held for one reason or another. Again, Mr. Peterson will read these into the record. Again, the applicant will identify themselves, and those that are here in opposition, they will have an opportunity to identify themselves. Those of you that are going to speak or give testimony, all testimony will be given to the podium to my right. Our officer today is Miss Kim Wakefield. So those of you that are going to give testimony, we'll call you forward. Ms. Wakefield will swear you in, and then we will start the hearing. The applicant at that time will have a 10-minute period to make his presentation to this board, and likewise and collectively, those of you that are in opposition will have a 10-minute period to make your opposition known. So if you have more than one speaker, be cognizant of the fact that you only have a 10-minute period. Once we complete that, we have one held case. We will go into that, and that should complete our business for this afternoon. With that said, I'm going to ask Mr. Peterson if he has any comments or comments to this board. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is one case on today's printed agenda. The applicant is asking this case be withdrawn without prejudice. It's a variance case V52, Mark William and Sally Stewart Money. Is the applicant present? Mr. Chairman, we got word earlier yesterday that the applicant would like to withdraw his application and maybe resubmit something different in the future. So with the board's permission, they want to withdraw this without prejudice.
Okay, that is District 2. Kim, do you want to make a comment on that?
I spoke with the applicant late last night, and they want to go back and redraw what their garage would look like, and they're working with the opposition.
Okay.
And so talked to Mr. Peterson and to withdraw it without prejudice to come back to hear it another time. So I make a motion that we allow V52 to be withdrawn without prejudice.
All right, I've got a motion for withdrawal. Do I have a second? Second, Mr. Skip. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Madam Secretary, we're going to allow case B52 to be withdrawn without prejudice with a 5-0 vote. Okay, John, next.
Mr. Chairman, there are two cases on today's printed agenda which have been continued and will not be heard today. First case is variance case V109, Elizabeth Montoya. That case was continued by the staff and will not be heard until the September 11th variance hearing. Also, variance case V110, Angel Oak Homes LLC. That case was continued by the staff and will not be heard until this board until the September 11th, 2015 variance hearing. Mr. Chairman, there was one case on last month's agenda for V82, Philip Wallace. Did you want to consider continuing that too, or did you want to?
Yes, I would. Is Mr. Wallace here? Somebody's shaking their head back there or moving their hand.
I think he's talking to someone else, Mr. Holman.
Okay, somebody else. Okay. Yes, I will make a motion that we continue the Philip Wallace case, B82, and let's continue that. I have spoken to the applicant. Let's continue that till our December hearing. And let me just reiterate that he cannot use that carport or driveway until the hearing in December. I'll make that as a motion. I have a second by Ms. Williams. No other comments. Call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Madam Secretary, we're going to continue B82 till our December meeting with a 5-0 vote. All right, John, anything else?
Yes, sir. I would like to ask the people in today's audience to please turn your cell phones off. If you have a cell phone, the ringing interferes with broadcast and presentations. So if you have a cell phone, please put it on silent mode. And with that, Mr. Chairman, ready to start the consent agenda.
All right, let's just get right into it, John.
Yes, sir. Cobb County Board of Zoning Appeals, variance hearing consent agenda for August 12th, 2015. Variance case V111, Roger Pearson requests a variance to waive the rear setback for an accessory structure over 144 square feet for a 192 square foot shed from required 35 feet to 15 feet, and to waive the side setback for an accessory structure over 144 square feet for the 192 square foot shed from required 10 feet to 2 feet, adjacent to the north property line. The property is located in land lot 1104, the 16th district, on the west side of Beckwith Trail, south of Arrowwood Drive. Staff recommends approval, subject to the shed to be painted in an earth tone color, and applicant owner to plant and maintain shrubs along the north side of the shed. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V111? Let the record show there's no one opposed, and that completes the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman and Board.
Okay. All right, let's go. Let's discuss V111. Is there any comments? Kim, again, this is your district. Would you lead us off?
I make a motion that we approve V111.
I'll second.
Got a motion, have a second by Ms. Trombetti. No other discussion. Call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Madam Secretary, V111 is approved with a 5-0 vote. Your business is complete with us for today, Mr. Pearson. You're welcome to stay, or you can welcome to go out and spend some money. And we need the tax dollars to spend a little money on the way home. Thank you. All right, John, what do we got next?
Moving into the continued case agenda, variance case V96, Len Pagano Jr. requests a variance to allow an accessory structure for approximately 200 square foot shed to be to the side of the principal building in land lot 627 of the 16th district. The property is located on the west side of Marneal Drive, north of Marneal Court. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V96? Let the record show we have one person opposed. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Ma'am, if you're in opposition, you can come up and be sworn in. All right, ma'am, before you get started, for the purpose of the record, if you would, please give us your name.
Mary Lou Pagano.
Now tell us what you want, Mary.
Okay. Thank you for Chairman and board members for considering the variance. Our variance request is very straightforward. It's to locate a storage shed at the end of our driveway at our property on 2322 Marneal Drive in Marietta. The reason for the variance request is that we have a hardship situation due to the terrain in our backyard of the property. It is heavily wooded and severely sloped. And if I may, I have some photographs I'd like to share.
No, I'll tell you what, just stand right there and give them to that young man, and he will put them up on the screen. That way, everybody
Oh,
will see them.
that's great. I have copies. There you go. So this is, yeah, because they're all in, they're 4 copies. You want me to show it? Yes. So I would want to start by saying that we have lived on this property for 21 years. We love our neighborhood. We've got great relationships with our neighbors. We also, during the same period of time, have run the Safe America Foundation. It's a nonprofit foundation here in Cobb County, started here serving Cobb County residents of all ages. The main program that we do in Cobb County is Safe Teen Driving. In January of this year, we needed to relocate from our office on Sandy Plains Road, where we had been for 15 years, to a smaller office center. That office center did not have any room for the shed that we had at our business. So the shed that we have at our house is from Safe America. It is containing both personal items and educational materials for our nonprofit foundation. So we have bicycles in there, you know, a number of personal family items. These items are used on an ongoing basis to educate Cobb County teenagers on safe driving. So we have information on Georgia driving laws, we have driving simulators, we have a variety of items in the shed that we need access to. When we first learned in January that we were going to be relocating, our original idea was to try and locate the shed behind our property. The person who was transporting the shed thought that they could do that. After they got it to our property, they said they could not. There was no way that the shed or they could navigate the property. It is at the very end of our driveway. We have high bushes next to our property. What I would like to, let's just say, is that the reason it's important that shed is available is because when we do assemblies in Cobb County high schools and programs for all residents, because we're a nonprofit, we also do programs for the disadvantaged. We have to be able to access the materials, the simulators, and that sort of thing. Some of the concerns that I have heard from my neighbor who is here is she thought we were selling items out of the shed. So I want to make the statement that never has anything been sold from our property for our business. There is no one employed at our property or on our property for our business. The location for Safe America is on First Drive, right off Sandy Plains Road. We are 2 miles away, so the shed is there to help us with the materials that we have. I think that's pretty much it. Just, we need the shed. We cannot locate it behind the house because of the way the train is. And so what you're seeing here is the shed. That's the end of our property, and it is the side of it faces my neighbor Tony's property. And I didn't see the other pictures. Sorry about that. So that's right behind our house. And so you can see, I mean, there was no way to navigate to get anything behind there. That is the way the shed is up on cinder blocks, so it allows for the flow of rainwater under it. That is the view from the street from my neighbor's property, from Tony's property. So you can see, you cannot even see it. There's another photo where you can see it a little bit, and it's all the way at the end of that. And there it is, the shed, and you can see it sloped there. So, I mean, it's very straightforward. You know, we use the shed for personal and for our nonprofit work. It has educational materials in it.
All right, Ms. Pagano, anything else you'd like to tell us?
No, except I love Cobb County. We've raised our 4 children here. We serve Cobb County and the residents for the last 21 years. I mean, so that's it. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, at this time, we'll hear from the opposition. All right, again, ma'am, if you would, give us your name before we get started.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Antoinette Wilburn. I live at 2318 Marneal Drive. I have lived in my home for exactly 33 years, a very long time. I am here today to tell the truth. Sometimes that's the easiest thing to do, but sometimes it's also the scariest. I have a very good relationship with my neighbors. I have seen their children grow. There is no animosity here. There's no negatives. It's just a situation that I have been called upon to speak on because I am having an experience firsthand that very few people would welcome. I also have pictures. I was told by the staff that that would be probably the most helpful, to have that visual, to see what I have been enduring, been challenged by since February of this year. It's been going on 6 months. Okay, that's good enough.
We've got a little glare on that, okay.
That's my driveway. If you stand at the very bottom of my driveway and look up, sometimes you can't see the cars that might be parked at the top. And that has been a very real experience. I know the Pagano children. I love the Pagano children. But none of them, they're all in their 20s and their 30s, and none resemble a 50-year-old Hispanic man driving a U-Haul truck. None of them resemble anything other than individuals with vans and trucks, carting, paraphernalia, and my assumption, my view is it's always office related. I don't know. All I can say, Mary Lou, is that you must have misunderstood me. I never said you were selling things, nor the garage, nor having garage
You have to address
sales.
this board, not address
All
anybody
right,
else, just
the
this board.
next picture,
Okay.
forgive me. That was taken at the bottom of my driveway. You look up again, it's a bit challenging. And several times, because I'm retired, I don't necessarily, I'm not comfortable with having to walk up that driveway and tell who's ever blocking the top to move. It's always precarious, it's always a challenge. Next photo. That's the shed. That's the shed taken from my front yard. There is a severe hill there, and I've discussed that with my neighbors, blessed as they may be, working on behalf of Cobb County, but we have an issue here. There is such serious, severe erosion. We have had sinkholes there, and that to me speaks the word dangerous. We have snake holes, we have severe erosion. Every time there's a rainfall, it just plummets down. I have tried my best. I've already told Mary Lou and Leonard that, for the last few years, I have been trying to use my leaf blower to blow everything up the hill, all the dirt that cascades down. So there's a bigger problem, if I may. Next picture. And again, I'm very conscious that I have 10 minutes, so I'll try to speak a little bit faster.
Okay.
All right, there's the bottom of the shed. It was taken, all of these pictures were taken from my property. All of these pictures were taken from the bottom of my driveway. Next. We could just cascade. I was concerned because the shed has been positioned over the lip of the driveway, of the cement. So even more water is plummeting down that hill. Next. It's a sizable shed. It's not one of those sheds where you'd put a lawnmower, your lawn equipment, or chairs, things of that nature. I see what goes in, I see what comes out, and, it does give me some concern. Next picture, please. That's the hill. That's the hill. I have left some of the all of the branches that fall over off of their trees, not mine, but I have tried very hard to organize it in such a fashion where if there is an incident, if that falls, if that comes down off the cement blocks, at least I have some assurance that I'm going to be protected. My vehicles at the bottom of my driveway are going to be protected. I am concerned there. You can just keep, yes. Another picture. Yes, please. Again, what I did was I tried to give you a visual of what I'm seeing, and it appeared to me that when that construction shed was delivered to the end of the driveway, the bushes are holding that shed up on one side. Again. Okay, we can stop. I've got very, I've been there 33 years. I'm here today because I happen to matter. I live right next door. Our driveways run parallel to each other. Therefore, I can give an accurate account of what has changed for me personally since the construction shed was delivered. I'm here to ask the board to enforce our existing zoning laws to preserve the character and the safety of my neighborhood, once peaceful, once secluded, and return to me my peace of mind, especially when safety is at an issue. I mean, I would ask, can you imagine what it would look like if every neighbor where you live were allowed to place their business surplus on their driveways? It would certainly not be considered a benefit to any next-door neighbor. When I first saw the zoning sign on my neighbor's front yard, I made calls to the Cobb Zoning and Variance Agency to find out what the rules and regulations were. I've been ignorant to the code. But with regard to single-family dwellings, what they said was, my neighbors are not in compliance. A citation was actually issued. They did take pictures. That was done February 9th. I spoke with the representatives in code enforcement, again, out of ignorance. I was deeply impressed with what they tried to ensure for all families in all subdivisions, in all residential areas. And again, I live in a residential area. It is not commercial. This has become a practical issue because the shed does not benefit my community, and it's an issue of fairness in terms of respecting my property value, to bringing to further light a serious safety issue, and to enforce the code, thereby enforcing my rights as a retired homeowner. It affects me more than any other homeowner on Marniel Drive. So I would implore the panel today to not grant an exception to the only driveway shed in the neighborhood. Having a construction shed used for business purposes, it deteriorates the appearance, the safety of the neighborhood. I say business because if furniture and boxes is all I've seen move in and out, well, my neighbors are asking for an exception to be made to the code here today because they can't put a shed in their backyard. That part I don't understand. They did put a chain link fence, a small enclosure, on that same hill, on that same slope. So that kind of dilutes that argument. If there was something that was actually established in the backyard, if a fence, a chain link fence, maybe the shed can go back there too. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't. But if they can't afford to house their excess belongings in an off-site storage facility, well then, that's when most people start downsizing and removing excess.
1 minute left.
Yes, sir.
1 minute.
My subdivision, we don't have an HOA, but we do have a covenant. I brought that today. And that guards against the placement of any other structure other than a single-family home on one's lot. And I believe placing anything other than your car on your driveway is understood. My position on the shed being removed from my neighbor's driveway has been a reluctant one because I understand now there's a risk of contentiousness between my neighbor, my beloved neighbor, and me.
Address the board.
But if I don't say something now, I'll be forced to live with the additional traffic to the driveway, and if I decide, or when I decide to put my property on the market, I suspect it will impact the value of my property. Again, the most serious concern I have is the soil erosion on the hill. I would just say taxing their driveway with such a heavy storage unit is dangerous. And all I have is the experience of having lived there 33, going on 34 years. So,
All right.
again, I have property rights. I thank you for this opportunity. I thank you for this time. I have empathy.
All right, Ms. Wilbur, time's up.
Yes, sir,
Thank you very much, ma'am.
certainly.
Okay, it's back to this board for discussion, and I see that Ms. Trombetti represents this district, so Christie, would you lead us in that, please?
Yes, thank you. I have a few questions for Ms. Pagano, please.
Do I
If you
sit?
could come back.
I'm
Yes,
sorry.
Yes, ma'am, just have a
Forgive me.
seat. We may call you back up. Just
Yes,
have a
sir.
seat for the time being.
and while she's coming up, I'll say, on the surface, this is a very straightforward application, and it's clear that there's some topographical issues on the lot that would prevent a structure like this being located behind the house. Just driving by, I haven't walked the property, but driving by and turning around in the cul-de-sac, you know, it's difficult to see the shed from the street. So from that perspective, you know, it seems, as Ms. Pagano said in her presentation, very straightforward. The lot doesn't allow for a building to be placed on the rear portion. This is a logical location. But having heard some of the information from the neighbor, it's a little more complicated because it sounds like there might be some impacts next door. So I just wanted to ask a few questions. How often do you or anyone from your office access the shed or your property to get things for work?
Rarely. It all depends on when we have some kind of an event to do. So, for instance, we do a big event in the fall and in the spring, one-day events. You know, if we have an assembly, but not on a daily or weekly basis, no. And if someone parked at the top of Tony Wilburn's driveway, it would have been a handful, one or two times, because they pull either into our driveway or in front of our house. There's no reason for them to block her driveway. And I just do want to clarify that the photos you saw of the sloping side of the property is Tony's property, where she took off all the ground cover, making erosion more of a problem. So, you know, when we do our programs during the school year, it's not even, sometimes once a month.
Okay.
It's not on a daily basis or a weekly basis.
Okay. And have you got signatures from other neighbors?
Yes, I have them with me.
Okay. I thought you had mentioned that to
Yeah,
me when we
and I
spoke.
had submitted them.
Okay. Do you park, are you able to park in the garage with,
In our garage, yeah, not at this time. We're not. We have a number of driving simulators that we use in the Cobb County schools. So the large ones are not in the shed, they're in our garage. But we can park in our driveway and in front of our house. There are only 3 of us in the home, we just have 3 cars.
okay. And then on that same level where your garage is, do you have a storage room or a bonus room down
We
there
do.
that could be used for storage?
We
as
do.
well? Okay.
Yeah, we do. It's actually set up, you know, as a family recreation room. So, and it would not be something, what we have down there is not something where we would be able to store some of the things that we have in that shed. For instance, when we do teen driving programs, we have, you know, 20 chairs that are stackable chairs that we use in our training room. When it swaps out and we train adults, there are different chairs used. So
Okay.
we have to swap those out, and those would not fit in the storage room we have in our house.
Let's see. Okay, the only other question I have has to do with the photos that Ms. Wilburn provided. It does look like, and again, it's hard to tell from the street when I'm out looking. It looks like the shed does overhang
No.
the driveway a little
No,
bit.
that's the other thing. Absolutely not. It is right at the side of our, it couldn't overhang. It's sitting on cinder blocks to secure it. And if it was overhanging, it would be off balance, and it would certainly not be there for 6 months immobile. No, it may look like that to Tony, but absolutely not. There would have been no way for the person who transported it to get it off the flatbed truck hanging over. No.
Have you looked into a self-storage facility that could house everything that you need? for your
Sure,
company?
and that would be a potential, except that that would require, it would not be as available to us to be able to use the material and the items in the storage shed. Also, that shed had been purchased, you know, and it's an additional cost. This is a nonprofit foundation. So yes, so starting with what do we have, you know, let's use what we have. And yeah, I mean, that's certainly another potential.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. You know, again, just looking over this, you know, from the street and using our normal process of trying to establish a hardship or not. I think the fact that your yard is sloping is a legitimate hardship, but the complication is that this is business material and business.
And personal. We have we have a lot of our personal in there.
Right.
And it's not business, it's nonprofit foundation work. So,
Right, I
you know,
understand. And
we're not getting money for anything that comes out of there, This is all things that we do free of charge to Cobb County and to the residents.
Okay. But that's what, and I'd like to hear from some of the other members of our board if there are other comments. But I think that it sounds like you've got your home, of course, and your personal items that need to be stored, but then adding all of these other things that used to be in another location
Right.
has created the problem. And if you're unable to use your garage for parking, that's another red flag, I guess, that there's too much maybe going on. I think we can say that there's a hardship in terms of the topography, but the fact that you're using your home to store things that you also need for work is not something that every homeowner necessarily
right.
could expect. And the fact that the neighbor, Ms. Wilburn, feels like there's a visual impact and maybe some kind of stormwater impact, although our stormwater staff
Yeah.
says no adverse impact, and there shouldn't be.
No, there shouldn't be at all.
But before I try to formulate a motion, I'd like to see if there are
Okay.
other comments or thoughts.
Let's throw it open to our fellow board members. Any comments, Mr. Gunther?
I'll just add in that I think it's, admirable that you're doing the not-for-profit business, but it is a business. Whether it's for-profit or not-for-profit, it's a business. So that's one point that I'd like to make. But I think it's admirable that you're doing that.
Thank
It
you.
just strikes me when I look at the pictures, it doesn't look permanent. It just doesn't feel like it is in keeping with what I suspect the neighbors in the neighborhood would like the neighborhood to look like. And so from that point of view, it's not permanent looking, and it just doesn't fit in. To me, it seems like the obvious logical solution to this whole thing is to find some self-storage and perhaps sell that shed to help pay for some of the initial monthly charges, if you will. And that would be, to me, a good resolution of this that would solve all the issues.
Other comments, Ms. Williams?
I think that your neighbor probably has some concerns about, because your cars are not in the garage because it's filled with personal stuff and business
Right,
stuff.
right.
So your cars have to park outside, so if a non-related person comes to get something from your shed, and it sounds like they do,
Rarely, yeah,
but they do come to your house. That's an added vehicle that normally wouldn't be in there.
right.
And they would have to, looks like they would have to back out if the shed's, so I
Yeah,
think-
but it doesn't impact
It
the
doesn't.
property, no.
But I went out and looked at this too, and I didn't see any other sheds sitting on the side of the house.
Right, that's
Like this.
exactly
This is
right.
the
There-
only one.
Because other properties are flat and, and a chain link fence is completely different than a shed that has to be
Right. And I
transported.
think that probably me, personally, I would be more understanding if it wasn't filled mostly with your training and stuff that you use in your nonprofit, which is a good thing.
Right.
But it just doesn't need to be in the residential area.
All right, Ms. Swanson, please.
Just to add, I drove by it as well last month, and you don't really see it from the street. It's the color is nice. It sort of blends in. I don't go onto people's property unless I have permission. So I drove by in the cul-de-sac a couple of times and didn't see any activity. But the concern that was brought up, because when I looked at it, I was like, well, this looks fine. I didn't realize how deep it is, how deep it goes back. I think it was something that was smaller, more compact. But the biggest concern I have is to listen to if it was just something that you accessed. So if you had a function, you just went in there and filled your trunk with the flyers or the
Which it
materials that
mostly
you need.
is, yeah.
But, you were talking about chairs, and I know it's hard to put a bunch of chairs in a car. You're talking about chairs, and so maybe there is a van or something that comes
Right.
infrequently, but it is coming to the property to haul
Right.
this material away. So because of that, would add extra traffic on the street, possibly blocking her driveway while you're maneuvering your cars in and out. So I know that you have a hardship with the slope of your property, how it goes severely back. And I guess the big sticking point is that if it was just a shed that housed your material, that it didn't house something that's going to require you to bring in a van or a moving truck to move the other items, it was just for your paper products, I don't think I would have much of an issue with this, but because it kind of is expanded more to where outside people have to come in and move the items, I really do see that it just doesn't really fit into to the neighborhood, into what we've allowed in the past of these sheds to just store things for that person's personal use. So, I think what you're doing is a great service to the county.
Thank you.
But my concern is just you moving the materials and things in and out.
Okay.
Okay, first of all, this is not an unusual case. We see this type of variance all the time. And of course, what we look for is a hardship. I think it's clear that you do have a legitimate hardship because of the lay of the land. What I don't know, nobody has mentioned the size of this building. What's the length of the
I
building?
don't have the exact dimensions.
John, do you know?
Yeah,
Is
10
that-
by 20.
Would that be 10 by 20? By 10 by 20. The fact that it is a nonprofit is commendable. It's still a business. Technically, it's still a business. I think that, and if your garage is filled already with either this type of material or other material or household material, and your cars are parked outside, I'm not sure we have a hardship in that maybe we need to clean out the garage a little bit
Yeah.
and put some of the stuff in there.
sure. There are simulators in there, so it's not just filled with stuff.
Yes.
It's big items.
But again, I want the audiences here and the vast audience on TV to understand that this is not an unusual request. We see these things all the time. With that said, I'm going to turn it back to Ms. Trombetti. Christie?
Thank you. I appreciate the comments and the help from the other BZA members, because I'm familiar with your organization and I know you do a lot of great work, and so we naturally want to try to help you out when we can.
And I do think that the topography presents the grounds for a hardship, but given the fact that, you know, a lot of this is self-imposed storage needs, and it is for your foundation, and the next door neighbor feels impacted, I can't support allowing it there on a permanent basis. But what I would like to do is make a motion that we deny V56, but ask code enforcement to delay enforcement until the end of the year. That gives you some time.
That's great.
To find a place and to move
Yeah.
it and
Yeah,
all that.
that's wonderful.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
96.
Or how about January 12th?
Yeah,
That would get through the holidays and be in line with the date of our meeting.
yeah.
So,
Thank you all very much.
thank
Okay.
you.
I think that's an excellent motion. We want to thank Mrs. Palgano for the work that she does. And I certainly think that, giving her that time would be a great benefit to that organization. All right, I have a motion. I have a second by Ms. Williams. No other comment. I'll call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, any opposed? Okay, Madam Secretary, we are going to deny case V96 with a 5-0 vote. And as Ms. Trombetti has recommended, that would be January the 12th of 16 before code enforcement would enforce that. Okay. John, let's go to our next one.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Variance case V98, Wham Douglas LLC. Request a variance to waive the front setbacks from required 45 feet to 25 feet for the proposed development, and to waive the side setbacks from required 12 feet to 5 feet, with 25 feet between homes for the proposed development in land lots 118 and 119 of the 20th District. The property is located on the southwest side of Hill Road, north of Mars Hill Road. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V98?
All right, those that are opposed, just keep your hand up. Let me get a head count. Just keep your hand up.
Let the record show there are 16 people here in opposition. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
How's it going? Okay, for the purpose of the record, young man, if you would, please give me your name.
Haven't been called young man in a while, so thank you very much for that. For the record, my name is Kevin Moore. I'm here on behalf of the owner and applicant in this application for a variance, one that, at least from my perspective, has been highly misunderstood and misrepresented by the opposition, and I want to go through that with you. First and foremost, let's talk about the property, and I'll explain the variance request and go through that with you. I'm going to turn to the proposed site plan. This is a property that's located on Hill Road, and you see Hill Road here in far west Cobb County. It's a beautiful area. In fact, to the rear of this property, all of this boundary line that I'm pointing to here, that adjoins Corps of Engineers property. So the only adjoining residents are a property here, and there's properties in the subdivision, existing subdivision on this side of this proposed 25-acre tract. It's just over 25 acres. The predominant zoning category in this area is R30. I want to state very clearly, we are not proposing to change the R30 category. This is not a zoning application. This is an application for a variance. The proposed variances are, number one, to reduce the front setbacks for the proposed R30 lots from the required 45 feet to 25 feet. So that is, move that front setback along these lots from a 45-foot front setback to a 25-foot front setback, or move those up 20 feet. In conjunction with that, we have also proposed, as part of this application, and it's on the plan as well, that the rear setback under R30 is 40 feet. What we propose to do, though, is to increase that rear setback on these perimeter lots to 65 feet. That is, even though we're requesting a reduction of 20 feet on the front, we're willing to increase the rear by 25 feet. The other setback request is as it relates to a side setback, and that is the relationship of the homes on the individual lots to those lot lines. The standard setback for R30 is a 12-foot side setback. That means 12 feet from edge of house to the property line. What we've requested is to reduce that side setback from 12 feet to 5 feet, but in doing so have also stipulated that we would remain at 25 feet minimum between structures. So what that does, and I can take this and kind of show you, is that allows the house to shift and be placed as close as 5 feet to one property line, but then understanding that the house then next to that must be at least 25 feet from that house. So it's not a 5 foot to 5 foot relationship. There will be a minimum of 25 feet between homes. Under standard R30, the minimum distance between homes is 24 feet, 12 feet on one side setback and 12 feet on the next lot. So we're actually increasing the distance between homes by 1 foot, meaning that we are not attempting through these variances to do anything that increases the ability or intensity of development that can occur on this property as it is already zoned. What is being asked in this instance is to simply move the building box, the building envelope, around so that it better fits the property and so that it creates a better situation not only for this development but for the adjoining neighbors and the surrounding core property by moving those houses away from the perimeter towards this internal street and allowing those houses in addition to be moved from side to side on a particular lot so that you can better create side entry garages and more room. If you can move a house over to within 5 feet of the line, then on the other side you can then get in quite easily side entries and have room for that driveway that would swing in. That's why the reduction is requested for a 5 foot side setback, but requiring the 25 feet between. We're not trying to fit more houses. What we're trying to do is build a better development, a more quality development. Now, in terms of a hardship, if you follow this road, the proposed subdivision street, this road and the subdivision street are the high point. It's basically, if you want to call it a ridge for this property, that is where the high points are through this property, where that road would be located, which is a standard technique for development. So the topography of this property falls away from the road. And that's why you see the detention ponds here and here. As this topography falls down, it falls away from where this road would be placed. So by moving the houses forward, by allowing for a reduction in the front setback, what you're doing is instead of grading at the very start 45 feet in, you're only having to grade 25 feet in. As this property falls away, you have to even grade further because the slope becomes more, it becomes further down the further you go. By moving the houses up, you are saving in terms of grading. You're lessening the amount of tree removal that would be required here and creating overall a better development by moving those houses up, as opposed to under the standard R30 arrangement, having to start by grading the first 45 feet till you get to the house, and then grading all the way back to 40 feet. That's what's being requested in this application. Next, I want to show you a landscape plan. The applicant met with surrounding residents on a number of occasions and has agreed as part of this application, has shown this to them. This is the entrance feature where he's done a detailed landscape plan along for these two homes that would be at the entrance, home number 1 and home number 2. And he shows you how that landscape plan would be installed to provide excellent screening and to assure them of the quality of this neighborhood. The point being that what's proposed here is not for the Board of Zoning Appeals to approve a site plan. This particular proposed site plan contains 28 lots at just over 1 unit per acre. I think it's like 1.08 units per acre. Very standard under R30, which is what this property is zoned. The applicant has gone on to say has agreed to a landscape plan that will provide for adequate, substantial, significant landscaping on what will be a beautiful R30 subdivision that the area can be proud of, and will have that type of entrance feature. Now, the confusion, I think, or the misrepresentations that have occurred, or the misunderstandings, I'll allow for that in this situation that have occurred with the opposition, have occurred because I believe that at the base level, there is a thought that this hearing and this request is about land use and not about variances. This is not a land use request. This is not an attempt to create a new land use category. It's not an attempt to rezone the property. It's not an attempt to request that this board approve a site plan that will allow more lots that can otherwise be developed without coming before this board. And I want to address a couple of those points. Number one, and I want to state this as clearly as I can, approval of these variance requests does not add a single lot to what could otherwise be developed here. The site plan that we've seen that was submitted as part of this application, each and every lot is a minimum of 30,000 square feet and greater. Each and every lot has the minimum width for a lot. Each and every lot meets every R30 standard. So at a minimum, this property can be developed for 28 lots. So this is not about obtaining another lot. This is not about a developer's profit. This is not about doing anything with this property other than let's take the building envelope and move it up and move it to the side where we can so we can allow for a higher quality of house and allow for more side entries and less front entries on this property. This board and the Board of Commissioners have approved moving that building envelope around innumerable times because there's obvious benefits not just for the builder but for the surrounding area and any residents, because you get homes away from the perimeter and you can have a situation where you have less grading. So this is not about adding lots, and to state otherwise is simply not true. Number two, there's been question as to sewer and septic. Under Cobb County, if you cannot and sewer is unavailable, you can follow the Cobb County Health Department rules and regulations, apply for septic permits, submit your soil studies, and meet the septic requirements for Cobb County Health, and you can do that. Whether this is sewer or septic may or may not affect the number of lots, but it has nothing to do with setbacks. It may affect the number of lots because of where soils are located or how a particular lot may need to be drawn to accommodate that, but it doesn't affect the number of lots. Also, it's been said that there may be stream buffers that affect this. Well, we've walked this with our professional consultants and engineers who do not think that's the case, but otherwise, that's an issue that's addressed in plan review by Mr. Frank Gibson. That's why he's hired by Cobb County. He goes out and walks it and determines, is there a stream buffer? Is there a stream buffer required? Is there a stream here? And he makes that determination, and if so, those buffers have to be adhered to. But once again, that has nothing to do and is completely irrelevant as it relates to setbacks. And lastly, I'm going to put on the screen, there was a complaint that adequate notice was not given. If you could, and I'll close with this. Under your ordinance, notice has to be given to surrounding owners, and I want to present to you what was turned into Cobb County Zoning Department to Mr. Peterson's office that shows that notice, that's the proof of mailing, was done on July 1st, which is within the notice periods that are provided in your ordinance. To state that proper notice was not given to surrounding owners is not only a misrepresentation, it's an outright lie, because that did not occur, and to state otherwise is not true. We think this is an excellent application that benefits everybody without harming anyone. And we'd ask your respectful approval of the variance request as presented. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Moore. At this time, we'll hear from the opposition. We can put that, sir, if you give that to him, we can put that on that big board and get it up on the screen, and that way everybody can see it.
Thank you.
Let's just wait a second, let him get that up there now. I'll give you. Okay. All right, sir, if you would, give us your name, please.
Yes, Eric Perosi. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Jenkins and Bowen in Cartersville. I'm here on behalf of Alan Bishop and other concerned Hill Road residents, neighboring, adjoining property owners, and I'd like to first say thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for giving us a chance to be heard on this and for your attention to this matter. I know Mr. Moore well. He's a very fine attorney. We've had a number of different cases we've worked on. I do have to say, we see this differently, and that's fine. The concern, and there have been submissions made before. The homeowners have made submissions. I made a submission as well on their behalf and had some attachments. One of the attachments, and I'll tender some of those into the record, was a petition that was signed by at least 40 of these homeowners. I will tender that, the original, into the record. A copy of it was submitted with my submission earlier. And, the applicant says that this is, it's not a rezoning. That's not what we're talking about. Well, I guess my response would be, then why are we here? What is it we're looking at? I mean, if you look at the true test for a variance, the hardship that we normally think of, I mean, it's not just one variance that they seek. It's at least 84 variances. They want to take each of these 28 lots and move them out on each side. And of course, the reason for that is to be able to put more homes in there, to be able to pack in more homes with site plan. And that would have a negative impact on Mr. Bishop and the other adjoining homeowners. Mr. Bishop lives at this 3245 that we can see on the blow up there. So he's actually contiguous, actually touching on the property.
I'll tell you what, let me give you a pointer and a microphone, and you point that out to us exactly how we do it.
Sure.
Cornelius, you need to pull that back a little bit. We can't see it on our map.
Okay. Brings up the GIS.
Eric, just point that out anyway.
So we see 3245 is right here. That's Mr. Alan Bishop, who's going to
Okay.
speak after me. And we also have homeowners that are contiguous and all in this area here. So they touch the property on this side, and they're also joining on this side.
Okay.
Their names include.
We don't need to know the names. Just, you got 6 minutes left, 6.5 minutes, so just go right ahead.
And again, our position is that it essentially is a rezoning, or it should be. I mean, that's what should be being requested here, because when you have this many variances, it's not just one thing that doesn't fit on a hard piece of property. You've got to change all of these lots under the rezoning to make this work. And this isn't the proper procedure for that. And so it's going to have a negative impact on these adjoining property owners. One of the things that the code requires, and this was in our written submission, is you actually have to have written approval from the health department for your sewer plan, and that was not submitted with this. The reason for that is so that we can figure out, we can have an opportunity to review it and debate it on the front end. When that's not on the front end, on the back end, that's when issues come up. As far as we've been told, there is no sewer plan. We don't know if it's going to be sewer. We don't know if it's going to be septic. So we know for sure that was not submitted. And if you read the code, it is a shall. That written approval from the health department is a shall that must be submitted with the application. And it didn't happen. Because of that alone, the variance has to be denied. If you look at the site plan, and I'm going to give Mr. Bishop a chance to talk about this in a second. I say the site plan. The topo that we have there shows streams that run through the property, and those streams feed into Lake Allatoona. So under the code, and this was in the submission, you have to have a 100-foot buffer for those streams, and I don't see how the site plan works with those. We know
they apply to the property because Mr. Bishop's been told they apply to him, and it runs right through his and the subject parcel. And I would submit this was part of our objections would be an equal protection violation. It's not fair to make Mr. Bishop apply to these buffer areas and the applicant not. And I'll give him a chance to speak to the board at this time. I will submit hard copies for the record of what I previously submitted to the board. And again, I was to just submit that this isn't a hardship variance, ladies and gentlemen, with all due respect. I appreciate the applicant's position, but they're trying to cram a site plan in to a zoning that doesn't fit, and it shouldn't be allowed. I would submit to the board this would be a dangerous precedent. You know, there's limited development left available in Cobb County. People want to develop. You know, you've got the Braves coming. There's a lot. This issue is bound to come up again. And this board shouldn't be a backdoor mechanism to avoid what should be a rezoning and instead just get variances for 80 variances to be able to get your site plan. I think that's a dangerous precedent to set. And for that reason, and the negative impact that it would have on the adjoining homeowners' properties, increased traffic, increased noise, for all the reasons we asked it to be denied, and I'll let Mr. Bishop speak.
Hello, I'm Alan Bishop. My residence is the 3245 Hobson Glen. And as we stated in our communications to the board, we understand that this land will be developed. It's too pretty of a property not to be developed. What our major concern is, if we look at Hill Road, from Mars Hill all the way to Silver Oaks, and Silver Oaks is the only area that has sewer within our area. There's approximately 250 homes in this area, and we're all on septic. If I look at Hill Road, from Mars Hill, it's 1.2 miles. All the homeowners have 1 to 2 acre lots on average, some all the way up to 10. I heard this board speak a moment ago with the variance earlier that this was not keeping with the area. If we could bring up the site map from the site plan real quick, if you don't mind, please, sir. I heard that it was like 1.08 acres on average per lot. This property, if I'm recalling, is only 28 acres. So he's got retention ponds. He's also going to have some buffers, because I have some buffers, which is defined by the Corps, which, if you want to show that, this is my plot, and I've got a 100-foot buffer, because if you follow my creek, that's my property line. I've got denoted where I have to have that 100-foot buffer. My understanding of Cobb County Code is that whenever the variance is applied, all those buffers have to be applied to the site plan. That wasn't done. Our understanding, too, is also that there's not an easement in yet for septic. So again, based upon code, either the developer comes back with that, because we've actually tried to work with Matt. Our biggest concern is we don't have any commitments from the builder, what he's going to do. We don't know the asking price of the lots, the homes he's going to build, or any of that kind of nature. So our concern really is we're like being held to a higher standard, because we've been forced to deny all the buffer zones. So far, he's not. We don't know what we don't know. We've asked him to work with us. We would actually probably make his life a whole lot easier if he would just give us some commitments. So, I mean, majority of the homes in our neighborhood, they're well north of $1 million. I don't know how this is going to affect my value, because we're not been getting any commitments from the developer as to what he's going to be building. He hasn't told us any of the buffers. And then, like Eric was saying earlier, we don't know if it's going to be septic or sewer. If it is going to be actually septic, we know the site plan doesn't work. I believe Mr. Moore made that, I believe we've heard from the defense attorney, or the opposing attorney, that we already know that he said that site plan won't work if they can't get sewer. So we're just asking let's not put the cart in front of the horse. That's,
Anything else, sir?
I guess not.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bishop. At this time, everybody has had their allotted time, so I'm going to declare the public session over with. John, let me go to Mr. Peterson first. Let's clear up a couple of things, John, that's been brought up in this presentation. The first thing is, John, is this a legal application for the Board of Zoning Appeals based on the conversation that you just heard? Can you give us a ruling on that?
This is a legal application for the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Now, it has also been brought up that the sewer and the septic, the applicant has presented this based on a sewer. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's the applicant's intention to hook the public sewer.
So
there's no requirement for the health department to sign off on this since it's going to be a public sewer.
what is
bill.
before us right now is a legal application based on sewer. That's what the applicant's asking for.
That's correct.
Okay. With that said, I just want to make sure that we're all on legal grounds. Anything you want to add to that, John, before we start up here?
No, sir.
Okay.
I have one question of
Hold on.
John. One question of John.
For Mr. Peterson, go, Ms. Williams.
John, it was referenced several different times, even by the attorney, which I was really surprised about attorney not knowing that a variance is not rezoning. So could you state that they're not changing, when we're in for rezoning, that changes the classification?
That's correct. A variance just gives you a break from a literal interpretation of the code for setbacks or lot size or things like that. A zoning actually changes the use of the property to a more intense use.
And this is not changing that at
No,
all?
they can get 28 lots right now under R30. They're not changing the zoning at all.
So the only thing that they were gaining by this variance is more property on the back by bringing it to front?
That's correct. It's actually going to be better for the neighbors because it's pulling everything forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bishop, I know you have a question. I cannot bring you up. I can't talk to you right now. This is our time, but I'm sure at some point in time, we will give you an opportunity to speak again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that said, Mr. Skip Gunther represents the district. So Skip, would you lead us in a discussion?
This application has gone for a number of months now. We continued it last time. The applicant asked that it be continued last month simply because there was so much, what I'm going to call misunderstanding and related discussion in the community about this application. I also want to state that one of the main reasons that I sit on this board is to make sure that the voice of the people is heard and to make sure that we don't get denser development than is justified by the rules and regulations and ordinances and so forth that we have in place in Cobb County. I'm convinced that the applicant could not get any more lots on this property simply because of changing the front setback and adding that to the back setback or changing the side setbacks. It's 28 lots. That's what you would expect. If you just used a rule of thumb calculation, there's just no way that that this is oriented towards getting more lots. I believe what it's doing is doing exactly as Mr. Moore said. It's enhancing, I'll use my words, it's enhancing the value of the property and therefore the value of the neighborhood, the neighbors' properties around this by making a more attractive property that has homes closer to the road so that less grading is required to keep the homes at the normal R30 45-foot front setback. By doing less grading, because the hills, the way this topography is laid out, the land goes down towards those ravines. Whether they're creeks or not remains to be determined at site plan review. And I'm going to ask in a minute for a statement on that from Frank Gibson on how that process works. But the purpose of this is to keep the homes closer to the level of the ridge and to minimize the clear cutting that would go on around the edges of this property. Now, I just have to say that anybody who buys this property, it's been zoned R30 since way before any of these other houses, to my knowledge, were built in this area. It's been zoned R30 since at least 1972, I believe. Is that correct, Mr. Peterson? Yeah. When the zoning ordinances and all that started in Cobb County. I guess it was the Wild West before that, I don't know. But it's been R30 ever since then. So it's been owned as a piece of property that is zoned R30. The owner has had the expectation that it will be built out at least R30. Might have had a hope that it could have been built out at something less, more dense than that, like R20 or even possibly R15, I don't know. The owner certainly has a constitutional right to have it built at R30, and I don't think anybody's challenging that. But I just want to make that point. Now, what the builder's proposing to do is to improve the way the property lays out and therefore improve the value of the property as an individual parcel and also as part of the larger neighborhood system of subdivisions in the entire Hill Road area. I just want to go through some of the objections that have been raised, because it just seems to me that most of the objections, in fact, all of them, really are kind of technical process objections. The one about notice not having been given in time, I feel some responsibility about that, because at an early meeting with a bunch of you neighbors who are sitting here at Alan's house, I made the comment that I didn't know what the notification period was. I'm the newbie on this committee. I've been here since January 1st, and so I'm learning a lot of these rules. But I didn't know what the notification period was. I did know that it's 30 days for a rezoning application, and I conjectured that it probably was roughly the same for a variance application. I found out very quickly that it's 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks beforehand. Is that right, Mr. Peterson? Yeah. And so when Mr. Moore makes a statement that it was done exactly right, the notifications were put out on time, that's correct. Now, a lot of you need to understand that a game that the lawyers play is to wait until the last minute to put those out, because they're trying to minimize the objections that come from the community, and we all understand that. But they did follow the letter of the law there. There's a question about how many variances, and is that even relevant? The letter that we received said it was 84 variances, 28 lots times 3 each. I'm not sure, Mr. Peterson, if you could comment on that. I don't think that's relevant, but to my way of thinking, it's one application asking for 2 variances to be granted.
And that's correct, Commissioner Gunther. And all throughout the years, we've done the same process for entire subdivisions, the same way we're doing it today. So
Right.
Nothing's changed.
Okay. Then there's the question that was raised about is the cart before the horse with respect to septic and sewer? The applicant has the clear intention of going for an easement into the sewer system across the core property. That's their plan. Whether they get it or not remains to be seen. I have no idea what the probability of that is. We only have to wait and see. But I am convinced that if they don't get that, they will have to go for septic. Septic requirement is that you have somewhere in the vicinity of 21,000 square feet of perkable property of land. In other words, good land, good soil, to place your septic field. Whether that turns out to be the case when the time comes to test that, if that has to be done, that remains to be seen. If it causes the applicant to say the applicant finds just soil that can't accept a septic field, that means that he's going to have to change some of the property lines here and there. At some point, that's going to represent a new site plan, and that's up to the zoning department to let us know, as a Board of Zoning Appeals, in my opinion, whether it needs to come back before us or not, if that's a new site plan. That remains to be seen. So the stream buffers, Frank, I'd like to ask you to come up if you would. Okay, you're going to come up, Dave? Okay. Dave will talk to us about stream buffers, but it's my understanding that the stream buffers will be determined by site plan, by plan review.
That's correct. They'll be confirmed at plan review. That is
Be
correct.
confirmed, okay.
I would want to point out that the streamlines that are shown on the county's GIS is not our adopted stream buffer map. In addition to that, the adopted stream buffer map has streamlines on it that have not been field verified. So Frank will do that at plan review, where you can see what the plan is proposed, and then he would go out and verify in the field where those actual limits are. That's
Okay, then Dave, while you're here, also, there's a question about stormwater management and runoff from this property onto Hill Road and onto Glenn Miller's house across the street, and I guess some of the neighbors who are adjoining Glenn Miller. Is that an issue?
Just zoom in on the front. Yeah, the front part. There's a very small area up adjacent to Hill Road that does drain toward Hill Road. Now, again, this is just a plat. It does not show any kind of stormwater management or grading on the site, so that would be addressed at plan review, and we would make sure that runoff from the site is directed to the pond, or if the area is reduced to Hill Road, then it would be a reduction anyway. So it would be
Okay,
one of those two.
So the short answer to that is that would be covered at plan review.
That's exactly right.
Okay,
Our code doesn't allow us increasing the discharge to
Right.
off the site.
okay, thanks.
Wait a minute, before you leave, David, is there any other questions for Mr. Braden? David, for the purpose of the record, if you would identify
I'm sorry,
yourself.
Dave Braden with Stormwater Management Division.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I'm not Frank.
Go right
Yeah,
ahead.
no, you're not Frank, yeah. So it's my feeling that if we grant this variance, or this variance with two parts to it, that it's independent of whether sewer or septic is the final resolution of how the sewage is going to be disposed of. It's going to enhance the value of the property. So I know there's been some discussion about maybe making some sort of a contingent decision that would be contingent on sewer access being accomplished. I think it's independent of the two, and I would just make that statement. And I think that by granting this setback on the front, the change to the setback from 45 feet to 25 feet, and moving that to the rear, that just does nothing but enhance the value of the property, and it makes a win-win for everybody. It makes the value of the property higher. It makes the value of the neighboring properties higher than they otherwise would have been. It increases the distance between the new structures and existing structures and neighboring neighborhoods. So it's a win-win for the community, for the neighbors, for the developer, and for the owner of the property to be able to develop it as R30, but with that change on the front setback. On the side setback, I understand what the developer's trying to do, to have a 5-foot minimum side setback with a required minimum 25 feet between structures. What I'm hearing and struck by is that Cobb County staff is being asked to look at a lot of additional stipulations, if you will, on a lot of these actions that just aren't really necessarily really contributing to the betterment of our community. And so I'm thinking that by changing that setback to what would be equivalent to an R20 side setback, in other words, 10 feet setback from the side of the property, not 12 as required in R30, and a 20-foot separation between buildings, not a 24-foot separation between structures as required in R30, would be a compromise, if you will, between what he's asking for and what the code requires. And what that does is it allows him to add the additional 5 feet into the back setback, the rear setback, so that would go from the R30 40-foot rear setback to 40-foot plus 20-foot plus from the front plus 5 feet on the side. It'd be a 65-foot setback. And I again think that's a win-win for everybody. So that's my thinking, and I guess I would welcome a discussion from the board before I make a motion.
Before we start the discussion, do you want to ask Mr. Bishop if he had wanted to make a comment earlier, and I can't recognize him?
Yeah.
It's up to you.
Alan, can you come back up, please? And you wanted to make a comment about something.
And Mr. Bishop, as you're coming up, tell us something we haven't heard.
Actually, the only thing I wanted to mention is that I understand that there wasn't an easement that was requested for this property through the court in 2007. It was denied because it had to go over an existing creek that fed into into Alatoona Creek. So I just want to put it on the record that it already has been denied once because of the fact that you had the sewer line going through this property. It would have to actually be over the creek because of the topography.
Is the creek on this property?
The creek is actually on the core property.
Okay, okay. Well, you see, that's in the future. That's the crystal ball part that we
I just
don't
wanna kinda
know.
get this on the
We just don't
record
know
that-
the answers to that.
Okay.
No, and I want to thank you for making that. In fact, you and I walked part of that, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, it's back to this board. Let me go to Ms. Swanson. Kim?
Can I bring Mr. Moore back?
Sure, certainly.
Mr. Moore. I just have a question regarding the plat that I have in the book and then the plat that you put up on the screen. It appears that they're different.
Okay.
So if you could put the plat that you were pointing at back on the screen and just to see if there is a difference.
It's the first 4 lots, or the last 4.
Can we move it over a bit? It appears on the plat that I have in the book, 28, 27, 26, and 25. It appears that 26 is not the same as we have in our book. 26 is narrowing quite severely in the back, and in the book, I have it, I actually have 26 and 25 both bordering on 24.
What's the date of that site plan compared to this
Yeah,
one?
I was following along with you, Ms. Swanson, so just so I could see, because I have the copy that's in your book. I think the one that it's on your screen now is just an updated one, right?
Has square footages.
Right.
listed out, Mr. Young.
Right. The one that you see on your screen was slightly updated to include the square footage calculations, just to make sure that all lots were 30,000 square feet plus. It wasn't submitted because it didn't change really it was being used, but it didn't change anything. But yeah, the one that is now on the screen actually, I think actually is a little bit better from a distance standpoint. But again, it's a site plan we're not trying to seek site plan approval for it. But it does appear to be a little bit different. I didn't even realize that. And I think
So
it's
then
only
because I didn't have a chance to look at this, I just have one more question, and then, when you talked about, to decrease the front setbacks from the 45 to 25, and you would increase the rear to 65, is that for all lots?
The increase for the rear would be applicable to the perimeter lots.
So then,
It's
because I
shown-
can't see on this, so when I'm looking at the plat that we have in our book that I was going by,
Yes.
then the lots of 18, 14, 13, 9, they all have 40-foot setbacks?
Correct. That's right.
Is that, because I can't read it on the new plat that
That's-
wasn't submitted to us. So is that the same here on, is it showing up the same on this one?
Yes. That's the same in either version, Ms. Swanson. The numbers you called out are the same either way.
And so the reason for not applying this, because the way you presented it applied that you had granted these 65-foot rear setbacks to all the plots, all the lots, what's the reason for it not applying to all of them?
Sure. If I did not say perimeter lots, then I apologize, but that's how it's written, is that, it's proposed on the here would be that it be an increase of the rear setback from 40 feet to 65 feet on all perimeter lots, because that's where you have adjoining residents, like Mr. Bishop, for example. Where you have It not occurring, for example, in the lots that you called out is where you have those lots that back up to a detention pond. And so those lots are wider and not as deep. So that's why it wouldn't apply to those particular lots. The increase in the rear setback.
Okay.
All right. Skip, did you have a comment quickly that you wanted to make?
Yeah, I was just going to offer that it was my understanding that those four lots, 25, 6, 7, and 8, where the, Kim, where the lines changed slightly from one plan to the other, were simply to allow for the front monument structure and so forth that was going to be, the plantings that were going to go in there. And so that just forced a little ripple effect for those four lots.
I just would suggest that we have that submitted, signed on the date as the plat versus the one we have in our book. So if we go forward with this, it's with that one and not what we have in the book.
We're not approving a site plan, though.
I just think, though,
This isn't
that
plan
we're looking.
specific.
Yeah, but
I know, but I think that when we're looking at this, it has all of the information that you're presenting, when you're presenting these setbacks, especially your front setback reduction and your rear setback addition. I just would like to have what is being talked about in the book.
And I think Mr. Gunther's intent is to do that when he makes his motion. I think
It is
that's
now.
his intent. Now, we have Mr. Moore up here. Any other questions for Mr. Moore before I dismiss him? Kevin, I do have a couple of questions.
Certainly.
Mr. Bishop has has mentioned there's been a lack of cooperation. For an example, on the size of the house, do you know how big the houses are going to be? You got an audience here. You need to tell them
Sure.
or give them an idea how big the houses are going to be, first of all.
4,000 plus is what the market's showing.
Right. Right now, what his plan would be, these would be 4,000 square feet plus, but what we didn't want to do is get into a situation where those were stipulations as it relates to
And-
setbacks. That's
and under a
sensitive
variance,
information.
we're certainly not going to do that, but I do
Right.
think the question has been asked, and I'm
It's a
giving you
great
the
question.
opportunity.
Absolutely. So we're looking at 4,000 square foot plus.
And I guess the other question is a pie in the sky question. You have an idea what kind of value would be placed on these homes for sale? Do you want to do that? Do you want to go that far?
The marketing sign was just posted at 500,000.
So we're looking at all, price points exceeding $500,000.
Okay. Okay, I think that answers my question.
Sure.
Now, any other
It's a legitimate
questions?
question. We just didn't want to get in a position
Right,
that,
and I understand that, but you have a live audience here that's
Great
looking
question.
for some help. So, any other questions for Mr. Moore before I dismiss him? Dismissed.
thank you. Good
All right,
question. Thank you.
Let's go to, now, we're still at comments. Ms. Williams, do you have a comment on this? Ms. Trombetti?
Just a couple of comments. I guess, first of all, one of the opposition, I think maybe Mr. Peruzzi, said that this was sort of a backdoor way to rezone the property, and it's really not. This is a normal kind of variance request that we see all the time, and we have recently vehemently denied applications that were clearly just a way to work around the zoning process, and I don't think this is an example of that at all. The variance request has to do with moving the building box around, not creating more room for additional lots. So I do think there might be some degree of confusion about what is allowed on the property today, even if this is denied. All they need to do is go through plan review and get their site plan approved according to R30 standards and probably still build 28 lots, or maybe it might change depending on the health department, but all of that is outside of our purview and what we're being requested to look at today. And I don't think if this is approved, it gives them any more ability to develop the property than they already have. It just decreases the grading, helps with their ability to lay out the lots in a way that's less destructive on the property. But I do have some concern about this rear setback. Typically, when we decrease the front, we increase the rear by the same amount. And in this case, they're actually giving us 5 extra feet on the rear, but that's only for the perimeter lots. So with that being said, I don't think I would support a decrease of the front setbacks on the interior lots if there's no commensurate increase on the back. That's something we haven't really talked about. So that, I'm not comfortable adding to any building area of any lot. And then other than that, I'd just like to confirm that we're not being asked to approve a specific site plan. They've got to go through plan review and all the development standards that everybody else has to go through. So whatever the motion is, I think it should be clear yet general enough to allow for that.
Let me just,
Wait a minute, I've got everybody's hand up. Let me start down to this end, Ms. Swanson.
I just have a question. So I understand that we're just approving for these boxes to move freely within this, well, with some perimeters. But, and we still have the question if it's sewer or septic, which is beyond
It's
that.
a sewer right
But-
now. That's
right,
all we're
I
looking at is sewer.
understand. I
Yeah.
understand. This is if it's sewer. What I wanted to just ask Mr. Peterson is that if this gets approved for them to have these setbacks, and the sewer is denied and it goes to septic, is this variance void? Or is this all taken care of? They still continue with what we've given these variances on, and it's all done in plan review because there's going to have to be some modifications made to this. Does this variance become void?
The variance would be valid unless there's a condition put on it by the Board of Zoning Appeals that puts it to the site plan or number of lots, or this is only approved for a sewer development. So it depends on what the final conditions are.
That's Board of Zoning Appeal. Okay, no, that's us, okay.
That's-
All right, I've been here too long today. Does that answer your question?
Variance goes with the property.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if I know we're approving this on sewer, if there's
Right.
a chance that it comes through with septic,
Right.
then does this become void, or can we put the stipulation that it becomes void?
I
Because,
don't think it matters if it's on sewer or septic. I mean, that's,
We're still
the
giving the variance.
moving the houses closer to the street
so it wouldn't create
shouldn't
different,
make any difference.
it wouldn't create different number of lots from 28 to,
Well, the sewer versus septic might change the number of lots, but that's, to me, a separate issue than whether or not the homes are a little closer to the street and further from the back property line. That's just I'd rather not mix
The
site
R-
plan review with a variance
Right.
application.
so in site plan review, they will decide if that needs to come back for variances or changes because of whatever is needed to accommodate.
It could, but I doubt it.
I just was
Yeah. and I
questioning
think-
the process.
And that's a good process. Now, before I get going, let me clarify something, because I have an audience here, an audience at home. Cobb County has no control over the health department. The health department has the final say-so on sewer. They're the only entity in Cobb County that can issue a septic permit. They're the only ones. So the county doesn't get involved. That is strictly the Cobb County Health Department. All right, with that said, let me go to Ms. Williams.
I think the number one question with me, number one, variances run with the land, so even if you changed owners or, if we got into about the sewer, it would still be with the property, so it runs with the land. But the benefit of the variance to me is that it gives a larger setback to the adjacent property owner, like Mr. Bishop. Whereas you end up, instead of having a 40-foot setback, which they could do today, you'd end up with 65 feet. And then that's a win for you, because that's a better scenario.
I'd like to say for the record that we're not fighting.
Alan, I can't take a comment unless you come.
Thank you. But anyway, so that's a win. The other thing, to me, it doesn't make any, the only thing that I disagree with, I think the setback in the rear, if you're giving up something in the front, you need to put it in the back, even if the lots are interior, so that it all looks uniform through the whole subdivision. So, to me, if you have those interior lots and we're gonna let you
Right.
go up 25 feet, then you should put that difference to the back of the lot. And I understand you might have to reconfigure those, but to me, that's the benefit of granting a variance, is because we get something off of the front and we can put it in the back. And I think it would look more uniform that way.
All right, let me wrap this up and give it to Mr. Gunther. Eric, let me just say, I think you did an excellent job, and Alan, I think you did an excellent job, and all the folks that are here. It is your community, and this is the transparency of this group. We wanted to hear from everybody. But I think Christie summed it up well by saying the property is zoned R30. These people do not have to be here. They could go and pull permits and start cutting trees down tomorrow, just under the permitting. But they've come in here because they're asking for variance, trying to protect the integrity of the property the way I read it. So I just want it to be known that under the current zoning, they have a perfect right to go in there and start landscaping or clear cutting that whole piece of property tomorrow. With that said, and I think we've all had our little say, I'm going to ask Mr. Gunther to wrap it all up for us with a motion.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback on what you just said about those interior lots. I guess I didn't realize that the front setback variance application was not going to apply to those. I would think that you would want that to apply to those, just so you have the similar look and feel throughout the neighborhood as you drive down the street. And so I guess I'm surprised. And maybe Kevin, if you could come back up, I just want to clarify that because I'm a little confused about this now. I didn't realize that was part of this application to not ask for those interior lots that way.
Right. And maybe I can help resolve that for you. The proposal was to move the front setback up 20 feet, but then increase the rear setback by 25 feet. So really, it wasn't a one-to-one like you see a lot of times, where if we move it up 10 in the front, you increase the rear by the same amount of 10. So we still stand by, we would like for the perimeter rear setback to be increased from 40 feet to 65 feet. That is that additional 5 feet. But as it relates to the interior lots, it would be a reduction from the required 40-foot front setback. I mean, the required 45-foot front setback, allow it to go to 25 feet, but that's 20 feet. The rear setback for interior lots would have to correspond to the same.
Then related to that.
In other words, move the box.
I understand.
But not the additional 5 feet.
But not the additional 5 feet, right.
Right.
Okay, then related to that, the applicant,
correct?
the applicant's request is to change the side setback from the current 12 feet to 5 feet. And that was part of what I understood allowed for that additional 5 feet to go into the back setback, the rear setback. I just want to make sure that I'm going to propose that we do an R20 side setback, 10 and 20, right. 10 feet and 20 feet.
You said that was.
And
that's
I just want to make sure that that still is okay with adding that 5 feet in the back.
That is
around
still
those
okay.
perimeter lots.
That is still okay.
Okay, good. That's all I wanted to clarify.
Sure, thank you very
Good.
much for your question.
Okay, so I'm ready to make a motion.
Let's do it.
And we'll see how this goes. Well, first question I have before I make the motion again is with this new site plan that we received day before yesterday, has that been formally submitted to the record? Does it have a date? Can I refer to it as dated today? Is it's, okay.
Good.
So, you don't have it?
Mr. Gunther, if you'd like.
It is,
Do you have a copy of that?
I do.
Can you submit that to the clerk then?
along with the
can, and it's-
landscaping.
That allows for, which one? The site
The
plan?
one, the site plan that has lots 25, 6, 7, and 8 slightly adjusted. You know,
Right.
their lines, their borders slightly
It's
adjusted.
dated August 6th. Just so you know,
It was dated August 6th.
and I'm handing it to Lori now.
Okay, and then there is a front landscaping plan, entrance monument and landscape plan dated July 10th,
That's correct.
which is now formally being submitted to the record, for the
Yes.
record. Okay. So I would make a motion that we approve application B98, Part 1, with a 20-foot, with a reduction of the front setback from 45 feet to 25 feet, and a rear setback extended from 40 feet to 65 feet for perimeter lots and to 60 feet for interior lots. And further recommend approval of Part 2 as modified to say that the side setback would be 10 feet to the property line minimum, and a minimum 20 feet between structures. And I would like this to be subject to the site plan dated August, what did we say it was? 6th, and the entrance monument and landscape plan dated July 10th.
Good. Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Got a motion, do I have a second?
Second for discussion.
Second for discussion, Ms. Trombetti.
I think that's a good approach, and I support the motion except for adding the site plan, because this isn't, it's really not completely engineered, and they're not quite ready to go through plan review, and it might change at plan review. So I think that's something we would do for a zoning request, but not so much for variance. So I'd prefer to leave that out.
Okay, and I guess I would ask Mr. Peterson, your position on that, because my feeling is that by having this site plan as part of the what's being the motion, would make the neighbors feel a little bit more comfortable about what we're doing, and it would leave some amount of judgment on the part of the zoning department if that plan has to change. And the judgment being, do you bring this back before the BZA again or not?
With the condition, the way it's worded from your motion, it would have to come back to the BZA to be amended. What you may want to consider is amending that part of the motion to say site plan to be in general conformity to the one submitted on today's date.
All right, that's fine with me.
General.
So we'll add those words in general conformity to the one
Okay,
submitted
that's
on
good.
August.
That's why Mr. Peterson's here.
Sixth.
He's
Yeah.
the general of the generality. Any other comments? I have a motion, I have a second. No other comments. Call for the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Madam Secretary, we are going to approve case B98 with the approval of 5-0. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention with that, and I'm sure you people are going to leave, so if you do, please leave quietly and we'll continue on with our business. John, I believe we're almost at our last case. Would you please call that for us?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Variance case V106, Jeffrey and Bettina Oshredder request a variance to waive the minimum public road frontage and require 75 feet to 20 feet for proposed lot number 2 in land lot 292 of the 20th district. The property is located on the south side of Creek View Point. The applicant's representative is present. Is there anyone here opposed to variance case V106?
Yes, we have one
Let the
in
record show there's one
opposition.
person opposed. All those wishing to address
Two
the board.
people opposed. We have two in opposition.
Let the record show there's 2 opposed. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Now, the young man that's sitting down, if you're going to speak, you need to get sworn in. Get sworn in anyway, just to be on the safe side. Okay, the room is quieted down at this time. Sir, if you would, give us your name.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Garvis Sams. I'm with the law firm of Sams, Larkin, Huff, and Bally, and I represent the applicants who are also the property owners concerning this application, Mr. and Mrs. Jeffrey Esker. And I've got Mr. Esker, who's seated in the front row on the other side of the room. And of course, at the appropriate time, thanks, sir. At the appropriate time, all of us, or both of us rather, are available to respond to any questions or address any concerns that you may have regarding the application. This is an application that came on regularly to be heard before this Board of Zoning Appeals last month. It was actually on your consent agenda at that time. There were 2 individuals that showed up and spoke in opposition, registering complaints regarding, number 1, the posting of the property, and number two, notification to contiguous property owners. What had happened is Mr. Esker and his wife were represented at that hearing by Mr. David Meyer of DGM Land Planning Consultants, and they had, at one point during the pendency of the application, taken a trip to their home state of Vermont, and while they were gone, the sign came down or was obscured, and so they've cured that. The sign's back up. It's got the sticker on it with a new hearing day. Mr. Esker actually has taken a photograph of that sign every day. I know we don't want to go through that, but if you have any question about notification and signage, it's there. Also, with respect to notification to contiguous property owners, those letters went out according to the schedule, as Mr. Gunther's already mentioned, at least 2 weeks prior to this hearing. So we've got all the notification issues that were raised as issues during the underlying hearing before you last month taken care of. We also provided, as a part of the ordinance, and some people may not realize this is required, but we have to give certificates of mailing to Mr. Peterson. So he's got in his files the complete notification package. The property you're looking at here, this is an exhibit that's an aerial photograph depicting the subject property, the totality of it. It's a 1.97 acre tract of land. It's zoned R20. It's in an area for single-family residential properties, detached, all of them. In an area on the future land use map, which is low-density residential, which is 1 to 2.5 units per acre. What Mr. and Mrs. Esker are asking for is a waiver of required public road frontage from 75 feet to 20 feet in order to be able to put an additional house that they're going to actually build and live in on the bottom part of the property. And of course, you can see from your site plan you have in your book, which I'll put up in a minute, how that is positioned. This is 1.97 acres, and what you can see the Eskers are doing are creating a lot split so that we have two separate homes on the property that's serviced, as you can see, by the easement 20 feet in width that accesses the southernmost piece. So here we've actually got enough acreage here for four, certainly three lots. So. And in both of these tracts, as you can see, are twice as big as any R20 lot. So it's in a density grab. This isn't trying to get something out of nothing. This is simply a prudent utilization of this property in a manner which positions them to be able to build a new residence and then sell the residence on Creek Point, which is the frontage piece of property. As I said, the totality of the subject property has been acquired in two separate conveyances. The bottom portion by way of a deed several years ago, and then the most recent purchase was the existing house on Creek Point where Mr. and Mrs. Esker presently live. I know this really isn't a part of the variance application process, nor is it part of stipulations, but you seem to want to know in the last case, so I'll tell you. In this case, the house they plan to build there won actually the Southern Living Best Cottage of the Year award. It's not exactly what I call a cottage. It's 2,500 square feet at a minimum, probably closer to 3 and above. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and a half bath. So if you need to see a picture of it, I got a pretty picture as well. But the point is, I've seen much smaller cottages than this. The style is excellent. I have handed out to you a consent of contiguous property owners form signed by adjacent property owners. The two individuals that are here, Mrs. Smith and the man that lives with her at the contiguous property, they did not sign. But everyone else around us has either signed or been properly notified. Most of these are residents up and down Creekview Point, as you might imagine. It's a well-kept neighborhood. Mr. and Ms. Esker love living there. The fact that they're leaving the house they live in now to move to a different house is no indication that anything's wrong with the house. They just simply like that portion of the property. It's a little more secluded. It just gives them a better position to do what they want to do. What's happened since the last hearing, I think we've really identified what the true intent of the opposition is here today. Going back to the aerial photograph, As you can see, this is the subject property about which we're talking here, the 1.97 acre tract. This gentleman actually showed up here. Mr. Lawrence showed up and opposed it last time. 2 nights ago, Mr. Esker met with him, and he said, oh, well, I'm for it. I'm fine. He's the last name on the petition you have. What the rumors being spread is that Mr. and Mrs. Esker were going to build some sort of townhome community, or have an attached product on the back, and you and I both know that you as a planning commission or you as a BZA or the Board of Commissioners are not going to approve anything over 2.5 units per acre, and probably would be hard-pressed to approve anything that dense for this area. So I don't know where that rumor came from. I'm not attributing it to the people that are here today. But last week we got a letter from an attorney saying he represented Mrs. Smith and the individual, the man that lives with her there, and said, well, he'd like to buy, or they'd like to buy this 35-foot strip of property right here. And it wasn't an unanticipated letter. We kind of figured out that's what their agenda was, because what they have done is gradually tried to increase their usage of their back property by encroaching upon Mr. and Mrs. Esker's property. And they offered to pay $5,000 for this piece, or if we didn't want to sell it, then they would file an action to quiet title in the Superior Court of Cobb County. Well, I quickly responded to the letter from the attorney and said, well, thank you for the offer, but Mr. and Mrs. Esker are really not interested in selling the property, and if there's any questions regarding the ownership of it, then bring it to my attention. Otherwise, right now, Mr. and Mrs. Esker allowed them to have a little fire pit on the property. They've got a horseshoe thing that they've been utilizing. I don't know what you call a horseshoe court, I guess. I don't know. But it's a revocable license at worst, and it certainly doesn't give them adverse possession or prescriptive title. And that's what I pointed out in the letter to the attorney. And I CC'd, I think I CC'd Mr. Gunther on the letter, or provided him with a copy of that, so he would be aware of that agenda that's being advanced. But with that background, I prepared and submitted to Mr. Peterson and individually to you stipulations, which you don't usually have with a variance application. But knowing what the concerns were out there, number one, we've agreed that we will have only 2 single-family dwellings on this property, period. That is the house that exists and the proposed residence. Number 2, we'll agree to a stipulation and a condition of this variance grant that they will agree not to seek any rezoning of this property, either downzoning it or upzoning it for any purposes, as long as they own this property. Also, I keep doing this, Chief Cornelius. There's an easement that actually serves this property that goes about 220 feet back here. It's a 15-foot wide easement, which I guess puts it in a position so it's not landlocked. These people that are here in opposition today have put a trailer across it, so I guess they think we can't use it. But obviously we're here today to gain the ability to be able to have access to Creek Point, and we've agreed to release any and all interest in and to this property, which the Eskers have by virtue of the warranty deed that granted the property or conveyed the property to them. Are we going to sell any of the property? No. Will we give up the easement for free? Yes, conditioned upon the Board of Zoning Appeals stating that a hardship exists and granting the variance. So with that being said, we do respectfully ask that you grant the variance. Remember, you and your staff had placed it on the consent agenda last month. The only thing that's changed is we've cured every single issue that was brought up from a notification perspective. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to answer any questions, and so will Mr. Esker at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Mr. Sams. You have 15 seconds left, and you have, again, used your allotted time wisely. All right, if you would, let's have the opposition please speak. Sir,
Good
give us your name,
afternoon.
please, first.
Thank you for hearing us. We appeared today.
Sir, give me your name, please, first.
Ron Powell.
Mr. Powell.
I'm not just the man that lived with her. We appeared today, actually, probably on the behalf of Mr. Ostraker, that we, as the last time we were here, we didn't oppose this variance. We're not opposed to his variance now. Our biggest objection is that there would be more than one structure built on this variance, if granted. It is because the previous owner, who is the employer of Mr. Ossinger, tried in vain to force his way onto the property in 2004 to build condominiums or two-car garage under townhomes. Mr. Ossinger has never come to us and expressed what he wanted to build back there, except when he first acquired the property in 2009. The section that Mr. Sam is referring to was a V62 variance that was applied to the property as it was a one lot at one time. This
We'll give you a pointer and a microphone. Give him a pointer and a microphone. You can show us on the board.
this
You
property
gotta
here-
stand, if you would, just stand over here.
This
There you go. Now go right ahead.
this property here was all at one lot at one time.
Okay.
The original homeowner had applied for a V62 variance, and it was granted because the two lots were together at one time as one lot. When Mr. Lowe and Mr. Love purchased the property for Mr. Ossinger back in 2003, we purchased this in 2002. This part right here, what's they're in contention about, when the two properties were separated because this one went into foreclosure and was in foreclosure when the variance was applied for. They placed the variance and a 15-foot easement on this property. Mr. Lowe and Mr. Love tried to bring a driveway down right beside this structure. But when the V62, when the two properties were separated by foreclosure, the V62 disappeared. It remained the 15-foot easement, and which is only an access easement. It is not for vehicle traffic, it is not for horses, it is merely a way for Mr. Ossinger to get to his property. It's a walking easement. It's never been blocked by anything. There is ample room to walk in here. And when they first purchased this property, we tried to work out some solution so they could build their home without having to tear down this home. And our only concern is that there will be more structures built in here. And that's been our only concern the whole time. If it is, as his attorney says, this is all he intends to do is build one structure back here, then we have been for that since the very beginning. We have not tried to obstruct Mr. Ossinger or anyone else from going to his property. We have been more than helpful and more than compliant with him and trying to figure out a way where he could build his residence back here and remain and have this one remain. We do not oppose variance for him to build his property back there. But what we did oppose was the fact that Mr. Ossinger had no contact with us. He had no contact with any of the adjoining neighbors until quite recently to let them know that that's all he intends to do. And if that's all he intends to do, then it could be stipulated in the variance that one structure, one variance. And that's simply would resolve this whole matter.
All right, anything else you want to add to it? Is there anybody else wishing to speak in opposition? Okay. Then I'm going to ask Mr. Skip Gunther, who represents the district, to lead us in the discussion. Skip?
Yeah, I'd like to call Mr. Sams back just for a moment. Garvis, in your letter of stipulations dated August 4th, the first stipulation says the Ossingers agreed to limit the number of single-family attached homes. How does that relate to the number of structures?
It doesn't relate at all, it's the number of structures.
So they could have more than one structure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
As long as it's built in accordance with code and
Right.
as to its positioning.
So, Mr. Powell has just said that, they want to see no more than one structure. The code allows for more than one structure under different conditions, and so you have to expect you're going to possibly see more than one structure, but just one home.
They're going to see the property fenced, and they are going to see another structure.
Okay. That's all I have. Is anybody
Yes,
else? I'm ready to make a motion.
I think your client has given up too much. I certainly would not just have one structure back there. He's entitled to 4 homes on that property.
Listen, Mr. Holman, quite candidly, this has been a cauldron that's boiling for some time. We want to put an end to it and terminate it. And with respect to the man's representations that they haven't blocked the easement, of course, it's really immaterial, but they have, and we've got a picture of it right here with the trailer
Well,
park.
I've seen a picture of it.
Yes,
And I think your client has gone way over that he's given up an awful lot. I certainly would not, if he wanted to build 3 homes back there, I wouldn't have a problem with it.
I understand. But
Property is zoned for that. It's legally zoned for that.
Yes, sir.
And a matter of fact, if he didn't need that easement, that 20-foot easement, he could do that tomorrow and pull permits and nobody could say a thing.
He and his wife are resolved with this circumstance, and they think hope that it.
I just want everybody to understand that he's given up an awful lot. I admire him for that. Any other comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Let's go.
I make a motion that we approve variance application 106, subject to the letter of stipulations dated August 4th to the zoning division, and subject to all staff comments. There are a couple of staff comments that are relevant. In particular, the sewer, that proposed lot number 2 must connect to the sewer in Creekview Drive. If the main floor can be served by gravity, sewer petition extension fee will apply in addition to standard fees.
We plan to get sewer off of Creek Point, and I've advised him of that, so we're
Right.
conversant with that.
So it's very simple.
Good motion. Got a motion, do I have a second?
Go ahead.
Who's gonna second?
You have to second so we can have discussion.
Okay, go ahead. Kim, let me hear your comments.
Well, I just
Or,
want to be
Kristen, sorry.
clear, the stipulation includes that this current owner will not apply for a rezoning.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm a little uncomfortable with that, just because you don't know what's gonna happen or what circumstances will change, and maybe he never thinks he wants to apply for rezoning, but I kinda like Mr. Homan feel like that's just,
Well, you have the quasi judicial
I don't know.
latitude to omit that if you like.
I
We
mean,
wanted
I
to
would
make
prefer to
this
leave it
as comfortable for you and in the decision making process. And at the time I got involved, there was Mr. Lawrence to the south, and there were others that were involved because of the misinformation that was going around. So we simply tried to diffuse everything at once. But if you see fit to disallow that we have
I
no problem
just
with that.
don't like that in general.
Sure.
Not necessarily just for this situation, but ever to say, I won't come back for anything, because you don't know what's gonna happen. But I do recognize, in order to build more than one house on this property, they would need to come back for either zoning or variance, so we would have the same opportunity for public input. So I'm comfortable with the stipulations except for that one.
And what
And it
would you
still
do? Take out,
protects the neighborhood.
take number 2?
Yeah.
I mean, if your client raises children, for an example, and he has a son or daughter, they want to build a house next door, I think he should have that right. And to give it all up, not knowing what's going to happen in the next 10 or 15 years, I just think it's a little over. So I agree with Ms. Trombetti. Let me go to Ms. Swanson.
Now we're redoing all your stipulations, Mr. Sammons.
No, that's
but
fine. I like it.
But I also feel that giving up, releasing the easement, is just, I don't think it's necessary. I think that you have, for two single-family homes, I think is sufficient. And I think it satisfies the opposition in that they didn't want to see condominiums or multiple homes. It's for two homes. This is what you stated. This is what we're looking at. And I just feel really uncomfortable going into something in the future of releasing, because easements, once they're gone, they're gone. and it was established there for a reason. I feel uncomfortable.
And a 15-foot easement could be a driveway in
Could
the
be a
future.
driveway.
Well, the other thing is, I'm sorry if I'm butting in, you can release the easement if you want to. I just don't feel comfortable making it a stipulation. I mean, they can
Right.
still
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that if they want to.
Okay, let me restate my motion. Even though we have a motion and a second, I can restate it.
Yes, you can, Mr. Gunther.
Yeah, okay, I'd like to restate it, that we, very simply, we approve variance application V106, period.
Okay, and let me say, you did the first motion, you second the first motion?
No, I think Kim
Kim
said
did.
it.
Kim, okay. And you're in agreement to allow the second motion? I gotta get this technical out of the way, just say yes.
Yes, I'm agree,
Okay,
yes.
now I've got a motion, do I have a second to that?
Second.
Second, Ms. Williams.
On staff
Yeah,
comment.
it's subject to staff comments, but I think that's pretty straightforward, yes.
All right, I've got a motion, I've got a second, now I'm at the, talking, any
And I
comment?
have one question before we call for the vote.
Okay, well, hold on. Any comments, first of all, from the peanut gallery here? Let me go to the peanut gallery there. Yes, comment.
Did the opposition, now that we've, did they remove their horseshoe stuff and everything from his property?
No, it's still there, but the property's gonna be fenced this week.
Oh, okay, so
I
then
would
that
s-
would be one of my stipulations, that all their stuff would have to be removed from the property.
Well, is
Could we
that,
add that?
is
I
that
don't
a
think y'all wanna get
civil-
involved in
that-
civil matter,
That's
really.
a civil
That's civil,
matter?
that's
Yeah, I
at the
think so.
easement.
I
I-
think that's a civil matter.
All right, well, I'm ready for
Of course,
the
this
vote.
is on tape. I've got a motion, I've got a second, I have no hands up, I'm gonna call for the vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Madam Secretary, we approve 106 with a 5-0 vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Folks, we just have cleanup work. I need to adopt the minutes from July the 27th meeting and the minutes from August the 10th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
And I have a second by Mr. Gunther. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carries for approval 5-0. I believe that is it. Let me just make a public announcement that this board is sorely going to miss Mr. Hozak, who's retiring at the end of the month. Rob has been here over 25 years. He's like the Energizer Bunny, like the Timex watch. He takes a licking and keeps on ticking. This guy's done a wonderful job, and we are certainly going to miss him, and I'd like to go publicly to say that. I think we all agree. With that, ladies and gentlemen, as Howdy Doody would say, that'll take care of you for another day.